Hello there. Welcome into a Tuesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on 740 KVOR or on Extra Sports 1300, or for that matter, the apps of those two fine radio stations, which are both free to download, both free to use, and both sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and well-being for all. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the program, and I'd love to get your thoughts. You can call or text them in at 719-247-1313, or you can drop a comment on the live stream of the show if you're watching, or you could just reach out. X at Gingerly Tweets, probably the best way. We had conversations going on from everywhere. Every one of those potential ways to get in contact with the program, you did that yesterday, and that's awesome. So keep it going here. I want to start, obviously, with the Denver Broncos, but I want to start with a sentiment that I've seen shared in the last couple of days following the Broncos' loss to the Patriots in the AFC Championship. And it's a normal one. I don't begrudge anyone of having this feeling or saying this out loud or to themselves to help them cope with what happened on Sunday. The sentiment is we'll be back. And again, I don't fault anyone for believing that or having faith that the Denver Broncos will be back at this stage. But really, the correct sentiment is the sentiment that was shared by Adam Troutman, of all people, after the game on Sunday.
You have zero idea if you'll ever be back in an AFC Championship game. That's fact. Like, you'll have zero idea if you'll ever make a Super Bowl. That's fact. Like, you never know. Like, things change in the NFL all the time. The parity in the league, like every year there's new playoff teams, whatever the case is. And so, yeah, to get home field advantage, first round bye, and, just not being able to finish and get to the Super Bowl. It sucks and it hurts, and you see it on guys' faces. And that's how you know you're built the right way, though, is that everyone's pissed off about it and not happy about it.
I'm sure the Baltimore Ravens thought for sure a couple years ago when they lost to Kansas City in the AFC Championship that they would be back. Just 2 years later, they fired their head coach because they didn't get back there. They got worse. Eliminated earlier in the playoffs by the Buffalo Bills last year. This year, they didn't even get to the playoffs. Broncos just beat a team last week that for years, the Buffalo Bills are in a perpetual state of we'll be back. Well, they didn't get back to the AFC Championship. Broncos made sure of that. And look at as for the other team that lost their conference championship last year, look at the season the Commanders had. It was a disaster. And part of that sentiment is not just getting back to the AFC Championship, getting back to the AFC Championship next year. Let's say the Broncos do that. If they lost again, would you be okay with that? Of course not. The implication of we'll be back is that the Broncos will be back and the result will be different. Just 5 of the last 20 teams who have lost a conference championship went to the Super Bowl within 3 years of losing a conference championship. 5 out of the last 20. And those 5 teams are divvied up between 3 franchises. The New England Patriots, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the San Francisco 49ers. Okay, that's it. 3 franchises have actually been able to say we'll be back with the implication that the result will be different, and it was. So you have to ask yourself if you feel like the Denver Broncos resemble Brady's Patriots, Mahomes' Chiefs, or even Kyle Shanahan's San Francisco 49ers. But that's it. That's the list. Tell me about the other Super Bowl that Joe Burrow has played in. Right? It's not guaranteed. And Adam Troutman points out one of the reasons why it's the parity. The league is set up to bring a team from the bottom to the top. The Denver Broncos are a byproduct of this. But the likelier scenario for next year, and then this is based on historical evidence, anecdotal evidence, and if you watch the NFL, you know this to be true. The more likely scenario next year for the Denver Broncos is that they will not make the AFC Championship, let alone the result in that game being different. If you want to call it the odds are stacked against them, go ahead. But it doesn't happen as much as teams would like it to. And one of the reasons why the Broncos are a prime candidate to not be one of those to join the Patriots, Chiefs, and 49ers is the way they won their games this year. All of these one-score games, the most victories by one score in the history of the NFL, belong to the Denver Broncos this season. And please, take it from me. I don't normally dole out advice, but here's some advice that you can take as absolute gospel. The regression thing when one-score games, it's real, and it sucks. 2 years ago, or last season, the Kansas City Chiefs were a perfect 11-0 in one-score games. And look, I knew, you knew, we all knew that there's no way that the Kansas City Chiefs we're going to be 11-0 in one-score games this year, right? Like there was going to be some regression. But come on, they have Mahomes, they have Travis Kelce, they have Chris Jones, they have Andy Reid. They're a modern NFL dynasty. Surely they'd still end up on the plus side of those kind of games, wouldn't they? They were 1-9 in one-score games this year. 1-9. So even the premise that the Denver Broncos are going to be on the plus side of those one-score games, win more of them than they lose next year, that is far from a given. The Broncos will be and I'm just preparing for you for it now, the Denver Broncos will be the prime regression candidate in the NFL. When NFL Live or First Take or NFL Network or any of the shows that you consume on a daily basis start to talk about which teams are not going to be as good as they were this year, the Denver Broncos are going to be at the very top of that list. And it will start with those one-score games. They will be the prime regression candidate for next year. And then you go beyond that. Chiefs are going to be better next year. Chargers are going to be healthier next year. Their own division, it's reasonable to think it's going to be better than it was this year. And that's just their division. Forget about the rest of the AFC. In which teams, whether it be Cincinnati or maybe they're due for that worst to first thing in Tennessee. I mean, survey the landscape here in the AFC. There are at least a couple of teams. Baltimore. I mean, that's the thing about this year. It was not only the Broncos' otherworldly ability to win one-score games that got them to the number one seed in the AFC, but it was also the fact that 3 of the premier powers in the AFC the last 5-10 years were all down simultaneously. Baltimore, Buffalo, and Kansas City. None of them were at the height of their powers. The circumstances all aligned, the stars aligned for the Denver Broncos, and this is where they deserve credit. This is not to take away credit from the season that they had. They took advantage. They were ready. They were in a position that if these other teams that we normally write in pen that are going to be battling for the Super Bowl, if they're down, the Broncos are ready. They're ready to pounce and ready to make the most of their moment, and they did up until Sunday. Do you believe that all 3 of those teams are going to be at the same spot or worse than they were this year? And the Broncos offseason most likely will start with a loss. Somebody from that staff is getting poached. Whether it's Vance Joseph, Davis Webb, even Adam Schefter tweeting out a little over an hour ago that Jim Leonard, the defensive pass game coordinator, looks to be a D coordinator somewhere. And look, if Jim Leonard is the only guy from the staff that the Denver Broncos lose, I think you can live with it. But some combination, maybe all 3, are going to be gone. Now, Sean Payton today at his end of season press conference did have a little bit of advice for Davis Webb, who got his second interview with the Raiders, about actually taking that job.
Well, it'd be a pain in the ass for him.
So maybe there's Sean Payton's last-ditch attempt to keep Davis Webb in the building. But they're going to lose some intellectual capital. And if you want to know the impact of that, go find your buddy or that family member of yours that roots for the Philadelphia Eagles or the Detroit Lions and have them tell you what losing a coordinator or multiple coordinators can do to your football team. So the Broncos offseason is already going to start with the Broncos being a lesser version than they were this year. We see it time and time again, and that's what makes not just the fact that they lost, going back to the Adam Troutman clip there. It's not just the fact that they lost in the AFC Championship, but the way they lost hurts even more. It feels like even more of a squandered opportunity. That game was one of those games that all season the Broncos have won. The final score was what it was. It was a close game. It was one of the games that the Denver Broncos you could book were going to win. But they were the team that had the coaching mistake on the 4th and 1. They had the game-changing turnover, not their opponent. And they weren't even the better special teams unit. Will Lutz had to come out and check himself a little bit because he claimed that they lined up wrong, which affected him on the field goal that was blocked. And he had to walk that back on social media and say, actually, we weren't lined up wrong. It just got blocked. Broncos weren't even the better special teams team on Sunday. I mean, everything aligned for the Denver Broncos to be playing in the Super Bowl this season. The traditional powers were down. They had home field. The conference title game was their kind of game. And they failed to capitalize. And that's why Adam Troutman is as pained about it as he is. And he's not the only one. Listen to any player after that loss. The only way to give themselves a chance to get back, the only way they're going to be back next year is if they are a markedly better football team, because that's what the league requires you to be. You can't just simply hashtag run it back. If you're not getting better in the NFL, you're getting worse. So they have to be a better version of the Denver Broncos than even they were this year, which is hard to fathom considering the number of games they won. And it doesn't necessarily mean they have to win more games in order to win the same amount of games. 14 wins, that'll do it. That'll win the division next year, I promise you. But they're going to have to be a better version of themselves than they were this year to even sniff those 14 wins again. Which makes this offseason the most important offseason this franchise has had, perhaps since they lost Super Bowl 48. The decisions, the necessary upgrades are going to have to be made if the Broncos can have any hope of getting back to this spot the next year and then take it one step further. 719-247-1313. That's our question of the day. Will the Broncos be back next year? You could text it in, call it in, or you could go to Facebook. That's where we have the question posted. But give me your thoughts. Do you believe that the Denver Broncos will be back next year? Coming up next, Sean Payton does indeed regret going for it on 4th and 1, but maybe not for the reason you think. You're listening to Drive Time Sports on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Maybe the Broncos won't be losing all of their assistant coaches this offseason. Breaking news from Ian Rappaport. The Denver Broncos have fired offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi. Brian Windhorst fingers. Why would they do that? Sean Payton is the play caller. Surely Joe Lombardi is not being scapegoated for the Broncos losing on Sunday. No, that's not the reason why they're firing him. They're firing him so they can promote Davis Webb to offensive coordinator. So the only way that they can lose him is if somebody, Vegas, offers him the head coaching job. So they lose a coach proactively, voluntarily, a far better chance of keeping Davis Webb moving forward. And that's what Douglas wants to talk about at 719-247-1313. Douglas, do you like the move by the Denver Broncos to, I think, try to keep Davis Webb?
Yes, I actually do, because if you think of it, our offense had a really bad struggle this year, and I think with Davis Webb, I think we might have a better chance on offense now, knowing that we don't have to pay Russ's contract anymore, so we can sign also players, and that will actually help Bo Nix out a lot.
What player, if you know by name or just position, what do you think that the Broncos need above all else?
We need wide receivers. Need either wide receivers or tight ends mostly, because we need help out Cortland Sutton, so Sutton's not pressured all the time.
All right. Like it. Thanks for the call, Douglas. As always, call more often. We'll get to that. The Broncos and where they go with the roster. But, I mean, you want to talk about how cold the business is. And I hear what Douglas is saying. Sean Payton is the play caller. So if you have an issue with the Broncos offense and you want to raise it with a coach, raise it with Sean Payton, not with Joe Lombardi. Come on. I don't think I played one piece of audio from Joe Lombardi all season. We know who runs the Broncos offense. So if you have a problem with the Broncos offense, it's Sean Payton's fault, not Joe Lombardi's. But clearly this shows how much the Denver Broncos value Davis Webb. And by the way, remember in the preseason when Sean Payton for a game decided, I don't need to call plays, who do you hand the playbook to? Joe Lombardi or Davis Webb? I was just telling Ray Dominguez, who's in studio today, this is the same thing when the Denver Nuggets had this happen to them multiple times when it comes to their, at the time, two-headed front office. Now, there was a clear pecking order. It wasn't like Ben Tenzer and John Wallace, where they were equal. It was Tim Connolly, and then underneath him was Arturas Karnisovas. Well, the first time a team approached the Denver Nuggets and tried to poach one of their guys, they promoted Karnisovas. Guess what? You're the GM now. And then when somebody tried to poach Tim Connolly, it was like, well, now Tim Connolly's our vice president of basketball ops. He can't take a lowly GM job somewhere. He's got a better job here. Now, eventually, it was Karnisovas, I think they promoted to assistant GM. But at any rate, and then the Bulls had to come in and say, well, we're going to make him the president of basketball operations. And the point is that the way you protect your intellectual capital that you have on your coaching staff is you got to make sure that your guy can't get a better job somewhere else. And by better, It's not subjective in terms of which team is better. It's the title. The Broncos give Davis Webb the OC job, and now the Raiders, who I really don't believe are serious about making him the head coach, and I have said for weeks now that the idea of the Raiders making Vance Joseph their head coach and Davis Webb their offensive coordinator, I would be, if I'm Tom Brady, which really negligible, the difference between myself and Tom Brady, it would make all the sense in the world. I don't know that the Raiders are serious about making Davis Webb their head coach, but their offensive coordinator, whether Vance is the head coach in that situation or not. And now the Broncos are going, yeah, no, you can't have him. If you want him, you have to make him your head coach. And you don't make a move like this if there's not a realistic possibility of Davis Webb being poached. Because again, Joe Lombardi, you kind of feel for the guy because what did he do to deserve to get fired? And the answer is nothing, unless there was something behind the scenes, which there wasn't. It just wasn't. This is simply them valuing Davis Webb more than Joe Lombardi. So, I mean, tough break for him. But the Broncos only do this because they like Joe Lombardi too. The reason you do this is because you know that somebody is getting ready to poach Davis Webb by giving him a better title of offensive coordinator, and I think that team resides in the AFC West. With Joe Brady being hired with the Buffalo Bills becoming their head coach, I don't know that Davis Webb would be looking at going to Buffalo to be under Joe Brady. Tell me how that's a better spot to be in than being behind Sean Payton. If Buffalo went with the defensive coach, then okay. I think this is Raiders related. And all told, it's a pretty smart move. Now, they can't do anything about Vance Joseph. If somebody wants Vance Joseph, they can take him. And we'll see if they do that. And then Jim Leonard was being discussed. Was it Buffalo's? Check on that tweet. I think from Adam Schefter, I think it was Buffalo to be the defensive coordinator. But look, you protect Davis Webb. That's one down. If Vance Joseph passes and Jonathan Cooper, people were trying to decipher what Jonathan Cooper said after the game, or I think it was yesterday. Actually, he said this, but was he almost ready to say that Vance was leaving? That he's happy that Vance is getting a head coaching job, or was he about to say, "I'm happy that Vance is staying"? Stay tuned. We may find out in the next couple of days here. But there's a chance that the Denver Broncos don't take as big of a hit on their coaching staff as maybe they were primed to 24 hours ago. Again, the breaking news of the afternoon from Ian Rappaport of NFL Network. The Denver Broncos have fired offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi. And while I don't think Ray's locked into the feed here, so we'll see if anything comes about officially when it comes to Davis Webb, but I don't think it's a stretch to say that this is about elevating Davis Webb. That news is going to come down at some point today or tomorrow. And then the only way you can get Davis Webb from Sean Payton's cold dead hands is by making him your head coach. And I just don't think there are many teams in the NFL that are ready to take that kind of a swing. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, Sean Payton on his regret when it comes to the 4th and 1 call in the AFC Championship against the New England Patriots. The Denver Broncos have parted ways with offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi. And look, I get it. I post things on social media, and I feel like posting like one word or something is not grabby enough. But I see this from the Gazette, and I like the Gazette. I'm a consumer. I read it. I'm a fan. But on my feed on Facebook, it says breaking after a season in which the Broncos offense often was sluggish. Head coach Sean Payton on Tuesday fired offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi. Like, this would be the first time that anybody gave Joe Lombardi credit or criticism for anything the Broncos have done offensively all year. So this is either the most petty firing in the history of firings, or it's what I'm saying it is, which is you elevate Davis Webb to offensive coordinator, and now the only job he can take is a head coaching job. And by the way, too, do you think that the Broncos just did this on their own? Or do you think that Davis Webb perhaps used a second interview with the Raiders as leverage to get, and we're not just, we don't care about how much coaches are paid, but you don't think Davis Webb's getting a little bump? Getting a better title? Now he's maybe more viable. I mean, the Broncos aren't going to hang on to this guy forever, but for a year now, you keep him for a year, a crucial year where you're trying to get back to the AFC Championship. And the upside for Davis Webb is he doesn't go someplace that's where he's going to be worse off. And maybe a better job opens up, and maybe there is a job that will come open that will take Davis Webb a bit more seriously as a head coaching candidate now that he's the offensive coordinator. So this wasn't done in a vacuum, and I refuse to believe that Joe Lombardi did anything wrong to get fired. This is about protecting Davis Webb from getting poached by another team. Your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Producer Ray Dominguez, what are people saying about this move?
Tom, why would Davis Webb want to stay here as a scapegoat OC? Wouldn't he want an OC job where he can actually call the plays?
Okay. That's Tom that said that?
Yes.
I didn't turn on your mic because I'm still learning how things work. Well, okay. So I get what you're saying, but if he goes to Buffalo, he's not calling plays. Joe Brady is. The Chargers officially announced Mike McDaniel, so he couldn't go there. The Raiders, we don't know who their head coach is going to be. It could have very well ended up being an offensive mind. I would have to see what the job is where Davis Webb can actually call all the plays and be in a better position to be a head coach next year than being in Denver. Because, Matt Nagy in Kansas City did not deserve to get a head coaching gig, but because he was the second in command to Andy Reid, he got one. So I get what you're saying. Like Davis Webb, I think in an ideal world would be calling plays, but do you want to call plays for maybe Fernando Mendoza? Do you want to call plays for Shedeur Sanders? You could probably do that. Do you want to call plays? And then you go to the other places where he wouldn't call plays, like Buffalo. Is Mike McCarthy going to be the play caller in?
Yeah.
So Pittsburgh, he wouldn't be able to.
He said he's calling plays. Yeah, Pittsburgh, he wouldn't call plays.
So really, I think given the information we know, and with a little bit of projection, would you rather be the offensive coordinator in Vegas and call plays, or would you rather be the offensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos and not call plays? Tough decision, but I think Davis Webb might be onto something there. All right, what else we got?
From the 719, this has to be the worst move the Broncos have ever made. Why would they do that? Oh well, Cliff Kingsbury, come on down, Donnie.
Davis Webb is going to. I will be absolutely floored if anybody else other than Davis Webb has the title of offensive coordinator with the Denver Broncos next year. I would be absolutely floored. This has to be about promoting Davis Webb. And I think we're done with Cliff Kingsbury. I think we just collectively in the football world are done with Cliff Kingsbury after what happened in Washington. Well, anything else? That it?
Not about Davis Webb.
Okay. Well, what else we got? We'll just keep it rolling here.
Ryan from the 719. Sorry, getting used to.
Yep. We're just getting used to each other, and we got two stations and different buttons. We're all good. We'll learn.
So from the 719, Ryan, who would you give up on the defense to get a top 5 receiver? Scott and Florissant.
Well, first of all, I'll say, is that necessary to do when draft capital exists? But who would I give up?
But who's a top 5 receiver?
Well, what am I willing to lose? I want to stick with the question. What would I be willing to lose if I'm the Denver Broncos on defense that could realistically be used to help the offensive side of the football? Jonah Ellis?
Yeah.
Maybe Jonah Ellis, maybe Jahdae Barron, perhaps.
Riley Moss?
No. Stop. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
When I do these exercises, I try to be realistic. Riley Moss has very little trade value. I don't think that the window gosh. I really like Jonah Ellis, though. But you do. I think that would have to be the position. That would have to be the position that you would look to leverage to get help on the other side of the football. So I'll say Jonah Ellis, but I don't know what that would get you.
Yeah.
But I think Jonah Ellis has shown enough that I think he would intrigue teams around the league.
That he'd be
for sure.
An asset. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And Jahdae Barron would be the other one. And we got to have a deeper conversation about Jahdae Barron and what role he had with the Denver Broncos. In fact, George Payton today spoke on Jahdae Barron because we didn't really see him maybe as much as we thought we would this season. Here is the Broncos GM on his first round pick.
He played nickel, he played dime, he played little corner. You can see all the traits. You know, he was good for us, probably not so good for him. He was drafted maybe the deepest second, the corner back room in the league, and he made his mark. And he's just going to keep growing, keep getting better.
And you could, at the cornerback position, you could make the same argument as the pass rush. Do you trust what you have behind? Let's say that Riley Moss does have trade value. Okay. Do you trade Riley Moss and put Jahdae Barron out there? Do you trade Jonathan Cooper and put Jonah Ellis opposite Nick Benito? Or if you're the Denver Broncos, do you take Barron or Ellis and dangle them for some offensive help? I think it's more likely the latter. I think if the Broncos were going to take something from their defense in order to help their offense, I think it would be an Ellis or a Barron before it would be, hey, let's take Jonathan Cooper and I really hate to put Riley Moss in this situation, but like Riley Moss, if he had value. How about Zach Allen?
Oh, I thought that name too.
You just signed him to an extension. I don't know that you want to lose him if you're the Denver Broncos.
I don't think you do. It would have to be a package. You would have to get something major in return.
It would literally have to be a top 5 receiver.
It would have to be like we mentioned this, like a crazy name out of like a Justin Jefferson.
Well, that's what you brought up to me earlier,
Yeah.
Justin Jefferson. And I don't think the Vikings would do it, but let's just look at the Broncos side of things. Yeah, Justin Jefferson would be, I'd be willing to give up a Jonathan Cooper.
Yeah.
For him. I would be probably anyone other than Benito and Surtain, I would be willing to give up for a Jamar Chase or a Justin Jefferson.
Mm-hmm.
If we go down and we're talking about like a Jalen Waddle, I think now now that list grows.
Yeah.
I don't know that I want to give up Zach Allen. I don't know that I want to give up Jonathan Cooper. But with the depth that the Broncos have, and look, we had Q Robinson step up on Sunday and make a big play in that Patriot game.
Mm.
So now you even more so have a surplus of pass rushing talent. So I would say, short story long, I would look at see what a Barron or an Ellis could get you if I'm the Denver Broncos. But knowing them, I don't think they're going to want to give up. And listening to George Payton there, I don't think he wants to give up on Jahdae Barron, who I have to say did not have the season I expected him to. But I do still think the long-term vision is in place to have him opposite Pat Surtain. And that's why I say I really feel like it's disingenuous for me to be having a conversation about what could the Broncos get for Riley Moss when I don't even believe that the Broncos have a long-term vision for Riley Moss on this team. And it certainly, as we start the conversation about what the Broncos need moving forward, it certainly brings us back to the draft. And did the Broncos, in the end, use that pick in the best way they could? I still contend that in the long run, in the longer run, I'm not even talking about 5 years from now. I'm saying even as soon as next year, I think you're going to see Jahdae Barron play a bigger role in the Denver Broncos defense. But was there somebody that, looking at Sunday, ideally you would like, hey, love for the Broncos to have another receiver in that game, but was there one that they chose Jahdae Barron over that you think could have helped them? So I think this is two things can be true. It can be true that Jahdae Barron did not have the impact that that I expected him to in year one. I knew they were going to move him around. I knew he wasn't going to be immediately opposite Pat Surtain and all that kind of stuff. Riley Moss was still there. But I did think that Barron would have a bigger impact. And you also have to give some credit to Jaquan McMillan here. Like, how much did his play push Barron down a little bit? But it's true that Barron could not have had the impact I thought he would in year one, and still believe that the long-term vision for Jahdae Barron is the right one and still justifies them making that pick. But he's certainly immediately put him at the top of the list. When you're talking about, the internal improvement of the Denver Broncos for next year, he's a guy that you're like, that dude's got to emerge. He's got to start showing that he's a first-round talent as soon as next year. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts. We're opening it up. So, leftover conversation about the AFC Championship. The Broncos firing Joe Lombardi, which I believe is the first step to the move to elevate Davis Webb to offensive coordinator to protect from losing him. And then, of course, the forward-looking conversation, which is how do the Broncos make themselves better so they can get back to the AFC Championship. So take your thoughts on all of it. Corey Roldan, who is up at the Broncos facility today, taking in the comments of both Sean Payton and George Payton in their post-game press conferences. You'll hear from both of them on this show as well. And then Corey was obviously in the building on Sunday. Could he see the storm coming? That's what so we had a text in yesterday saying that in the East stands, they could tell a storm was coming in. I haven't gotten a definitive from either Mike Vrabel or Sean Payton that they knew that the weather was going to be like that. And I think something that Sean Payton said even goes to the idea that even they didn't know that it was going to be as bad as it turned out to be. And that certainly made a lot of decisions and things that the Denver Broncos did on Sunday look worse in retrospect, including the 4th and 1. Coming up next, Sean Payton with another day to reflect. Does he regret the 4th and 1 decision? You're listening to Drive Time Sports on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in hour 2 on this Tuesday. Appreciate you tuning into the show. Shouts to those of you watching on our social media platforms. And by hour, I mean 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Don't want to forget, like, the biggest website outside of Google in the whole world. You can watch there as well. And if I may, I know you're already doing me a huge favor by watching the show. If you could like, follow, subscribe, I'll make it worth your while. You drop a comment, I'll read it on the air. Corey Roldan, KKTV 11, joins me in the next segment. Wide-ranging Broncos conversation with him, and we're having a wide-ranging Broncos conversation today. The news of the afternoon, Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero reporting that the Broncos have fired offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi. To me, this is a clear sign that they will elevate Davis Webb to that position, and Davis Webb will be virtually off the market unless somebody wants to make him a head coach, and I just don't believe that anybody is serious about that at this point. I'm not saying Davis Webb can't be a head coach soon and won't be a good one. But there are other candidates, I think, for these teams that are a little bit more ready. And also, too, Sean Payton has given privately and publicly advice to Vance Joseph and Davis Webb about going to one of these places where the ownership situation makes it impossible to win. So while Sean Payton has been incredibly supportive of his assistants, because all these head coaches love their coaching tree blooming on other branches, he did warn them, like, hey, you go to, I mean, let's just call it for what it is, Cleveland, Arizona, maybe Vegas. Do you really think that you'll be able to have any success? So we'll see if anything does, if an announcement on Davis Webb comes today or if it will happen a little bit later. As for the guy who is it really in charge of the Broncos offense, not the guy that was fired today, Sean Payton had his end of season press conference today. And I don't know about you, and I'd be genuinely curious at 719-247-1313. You feel any differently about the 4th and 1 call? You know, sometimes you feel a certain way in the moment, even the day after, but then you get another day and you're like, okay, maybe I've changed a little bit on this. I have not changed at all on the 4th and 1. I'm still in the same spot. And the closing argument, if you will, was Sean Payton today, and I am not swayed. But here's Sean Payton on whether he has any regret after looking back on the 4th and 1 decision.
Probably what irks me more is the call more than the decision. It's still early in the game now, you know, and we knew there was going to be flurries. Well, we have a new feel for flurries here, you know, or what can change at the base end of a mountain. But that, there are those moments where, you know, that you wish you had back.
Okay. Again, I didn't know the weather was coming in. Like, I believe him. I didn't hear Mike Vrabel talk about how they expected it to end up like that, and that's why he called the game the way that he did, or Josh McDaniels more accurately called the game the way that they did. I think everybody reacted in the moment to that weather. But again, the expectation was no matter what side you were on, whether you thought New England or Denver would win, you had to think it was going to be close. So I really don't think you need the weather to justify your position, a critical position that you have taken against Sean Payton in the 4th and 1. You don't need that. It just makes it look that much worse in retrospect because that game basically became 2.5 quarters long. But what Sean Payton gets to there, I think, is not being talked about as much as just the fact that he went for it. And I pointed this out yesterday. In fact, there's a video of it on Instagram and Facebook right now. I mean, it's not just that he went for it. It's that he went for it with Jarrett Stidham. And not just that he went for it and he went for it with Jarrett Stidham. The play call that he had was not a good play call. So I agree with him there that the play call was all wrong. If you need a yard, run for the yard. It's a yard. But if you don't feel, and look, maybe the answer is Sean Payton didn't believe in his running backs and didn't have Bo Nix. Wouldn't that be an argument to not go for it then? Right? If you didn't feel like you could run it, if that was the reason he called pass, then maybe that should have actually been a reason to not go for it on 4th and 1 because you don't have the confidence in the people who would be running the ball to get that 1 yard. But even if you're dead set on calling a pass play, you're like, a run is just not the right play call. It's not about not believing in your team's ability to get 1 yard. It's reacting to what New England did or New England was playing in. Okay, fine. Why don't you at least roll the pocket with him? Like, you just sent him out there on an island by himself. Why don't you move the pocket with Jarrett Stidham so that way he has more protection than he ended up having? But if it completely broke down and it was dead on arrival, which it looked like that play was as it was unfolding, maybe he could fall forward with some protection around him for the first down. So taking the actual decision to go for it out of the equation, as difficult as that might be, yeah, I don't like the play call either. And that's the one thing that Sean Payton is conceding. But I still don't think it was the right decision to go for it. Run, pass, doesn't matter. It layers on top of itself the reasons why they shouldn't have gone for it when you consider what the play call was, what the personnel was, especially at quarterback. But it wasn't the right decision. Because 10-0 is still a huge boost for the defense. Right? As a defensive player, to be able to go out there knowing that you have a little bit of wiggle room, that you have a little bit of a cushion, that a touchdown is not going to immediately change the entire game. That's big. So and I said it yesterday, the difference between 7-0 and 10-0 is massive. The difference between 10-0 and 14-0 is not as great. There's a difference, but it's not as big of a difference as what it turned out to be, as opposed to being up 10-0. It appears, in listening to Sean Payton after the game and today, it just seems like he didn't think about the downside. He didn't weigh the risk reward. He had a reward in his head, and that's all he was focused on. And you can't do that. Your job as a coach is to weigh both. And he talked about, normally having a spot and a chain gang coming out to be able to kind of run through this a little bit in his head. But this is Sean Payton here. They called a timeout. He had time to talk himself out of it, to weigh the risk and reward. It's not a defeatist attitude to say it's not worth the risk. That's part of your job as a head coach. And that's why I think that overconfidence, cockiness, hubris, whatever you want to call it, played into this. Because he felt like, man, if I put them down 14-0 with my backup quarterback, they're toast. They're done. And maybe that would have been the case. But here's where all these other factors come in. Like, is 10-0 not okay? Is 10-0 not already putting the Patriots in a pretty bad spot? And then the belief in Jarrett Stidham in that moment, where the entire premise of the game and why I backed the Denver Broncos in that game, and I think the people that did think that the Denver Broncos would win were not saying that Sean Payton was going to make Jarrett Stidham look like a Pro Bowl quarterback in that game. It was that he was going to protect him in many ways. That he wasn't going to ask him to do too much. And that's exactly what he did. One thing, though, that I did have wrong, I have to say, the analytics weren't in his favor. Now, he didn't make an analytics argument, but going for it on fourth down just feels like, oh, the analytics say so. Analytics are split. I've seen two models. ESPN was one, and then the other one was Ben Baldwin's model. You don't need to know the name. Just know that that's a popular analytics model for the NFL to use. So ESPN said, go for it. Ben Baldwin's model said kick. So at best, the analytics were split on the matter. So he didn't have that in his corner. And again, Sean Payton didn't use that. He didn't say the analytics told me to go for it. He tried to make a feel for the game argument. And it doesn't work. But him simply saying the analytics told me to wouldn't have been any more satisfying, to be fair. So analytics were split. So he didn't have that going in his favor. The feel of the game, the way the game was going, didn't say go for it. How you expected the rest of the game to go, or how you should have expected the rest of the game to go, flurries or no flurries, you're expecting a tight game and expecting a game that points were going to be at a premium, including 3 points. Those points are at a premium, not just 4 or 7. And also there were personnel considerations that should have been taken into account that weren't. And here's another one. Sean Payton didn't go for a lot of fourth downs this year. That's what breaks the brain of all of us when we're trying to discuss this. The Broncos went for it on the third fewest amount of fourth downs this year. There were only 2 teams that went for fewer fourth downs than the Denver Broncos. And they had a lot. They had a lot, right? Wasn't like they were never in a fourth down situation. They were in a fourth down situation a lot. Only 2 teams. One was the Texans, and I forget the other one. That was it. And in terms of the percentage of the Denver Broncos getting first downs on fourth, they were in the bottom 10 of the league. They were not a good fourth down team. Plain and simple. And they were trying to do it with Jarrett Stidham as their quarterback. And they were trying to do it in a situation that they didn't have to. That 10-0 would have been not as good as 14-0, I grant you. but a whole heck of a lot better than 7-0. So Sean Payton's on an island with this one. The only argument he can make, and he hasn't been this bold, to say I'm Sean Payton and I said it and I decided it. He didn't go that route, but that would be the only, like, there's so many things that go against the idea of going for it on 4th and 1 there. He is on an island with this decision, but Sean Payton does not mind being on an island all by himself.
I don't pay attention to all the criticism. I think if I paid attention to that, I don't know that we'd ever be in this position.
Yeah, and I don't think he should listen to the criticism. Okay, this is not me saying, hey, Sean Payton, listen to me. I'm rightly criticizing him, but what makes that decision so difficult to stomach if you're a Broncos fan is not just all the reasons why you shouldn't have gone for it, but also knowing that mentality, it's like Dan Campbell. Like, you take the good with the bad. You love so much about what Dan Campbell does, but there is this one fatal flaw that he has that you legitimately wonder if the Lions have gotten as close to a Super Bowl as they're all ever going to get with Dan Campbell as their head coach. It's the same with Sean Payton. The Broncos are only in the AFC Championship, or not. Sean Payton is the biggest reason the Denver Broncos are in the AFC Championship. There are many other reasons. Sean Payton is number one. You're not in that game without Sean Payton. So that's what makes it harder to stomach, because you're like, man, this guy did so much to get us to that game. And for him, of all people, to make right along with Jared Stidham's push pass the most egregiously wrong decision in the entire football game, it's shocking. So Sean Payton at least says the play call was wrong, but defends that he went for it. Even though popular opinion, analytics, personnel, time and score would all point to it being the wrong decision. By the way, Raison, Seattle was and they were worst, right? I shouldn't say worst. They went for it on the fewest 4th downs this year. So it was Broncos, 3rd fewest, then Houston, then Seattle. And it was out of character. That's the other one. It was out of character for what Sean Payton had done all year long to help the Denver Broncos win games exactly like the one that played out on Sunday. He deviated from what he was during the regular season. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on 4th and 1. Coming up next, Corey Roldan joins me. Did he know that the storm was coming? And what was the atmosphere like there at Empower Field on Sunday? Corey Roldan, my guest after this. The fallout from the Broncos' loss to the New England Patriots continues. News of the afternoon, Joe Lombardi, the offensive coordinator of the Denver Broncos, has been fired. And away we go with the Broncos offseason. It is already here. And joining me now, not just to discuss the Broncos offseason, but want to get his thoughts on Sunday. He is Corey Roldan from KKTV 11. Let me first, Corey, welcome you and then ask you, what do you, I've given my thoughts earlier. I'm not going to lead you in any direction. Why was Joe Lombardi fired today?
It could be two reasons. I first thought, I'm getting a bunch of Broncos texts. I'm sorry.
Tell them to tune into the show. We'll get to all of them.
No. It's from people texting me that, like, my sources.
Oh, okay.
About this hiring, because I thought originally I was like, oh, this is to keep Davis Webb here. He didn't get the Vegas job, and there's obviously going to be teams that want him as their offensive coordinator. That's what I thought. I was like, man, this is Sean trying to keep a young, innovative, smart coach that's going to be a head coach, if not this year, in the next couple of years on his staff. Then I was told that that's not the case and that they're going to do an outside hire. And I think Sean wants a fresh perspective on how to improve this offense, which would be a first in the history of Sean Payton as a man and as a coach. Yeah, that's what I got so far.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you buy that?
No, I think it's going to be either Zach Strief or Davis Webb.
Yeah, that would be wild to find, because again, somebody had called in last hour on this and was talking about the offense, sputtering, and you brought that up. That's Sean Payton's fault. Like the idea that they would
but you're not going to fire the guy who literally rebuilt your team, and I get what you're saying.
But what I'm saying is, if there is an issue with the Broncos offense, the Joe Lombardi certainly doesn't. I don't know if have you played any clips from Joe Lombardi this season? Like, I haven't.
No, but I used more clips of Davis Webb in the last year than Joe Lombardi.
That would be wild if this was not about Davis Webb, protecting Davis Webb from getting poached, and this was about, I don't like anything on the offense. Well, that's you, Sean. So that would be. Well, I guess we'll all stay tuned.
Real quick.
Yeah.
This has been bothering me all the last hour and a half.
Let it out.
Since this news came out. Bill Belichick not being a first ballot Hall of Famer. Dude, is there a coach now that can ever be a first ballot Hall of Famer? You win 6 Super Bowls and 2 as a defensive coordinator. And was it Bill Polian, the former Colts general manager?
Oh, is that who got in?
No, he's the guy that was advocating that Belichick should pay for Spygate and Deflategate to all the other voters. Are you kidding me? No coach should ever be a first ballot Hall of Famer now.
That's and my first thought, and it's funny you bring that up, because Ray and I are sitting here in studio when Ray brought up that news. I was like, what? And he's like, he fell short of the 40. I'm like, yeah, but why? Like, why is Bill Belichick falling short of the votes he needs? Last time I checked, they don't consider what you did in the college ranks to be put in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I don't even think 1 year at North Carolina is enough. That's wild. My thought went to, is this like, we see this in baseball all the time, right, Corey? Like, only the, nobody's a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's a special right reserved for, that's just clown behavior. The 10 people that didn't vote for Bill Belichick are absolute clowns.
They're a joke. Baseball's Hall of Fame is a joke because they don't have the best players in the Hall of Fame, like Pete Rose, like Barry Bonds. I get the steroids, whatever, but you don't have arguably 4 of your top 10 greatest players of all time in the Hall of Fame. The NFL now.
Meanwhile, you're putting in Jeff Kent and Craig Biggio and some of these other guys that right. Exactly. Continue.
Bill Belichick.
Mm-hmm.
Since maybe Don Shula, I think he's the greatest coach of all time. Okay. He literally coached maybe one of the greatest defenses of all time with the Giants. Yeah, he struggled without Tom Brady, but you know what? Tom Brady was a rookie or second-year player. He won a Super Bowl with him, and Brady wasn't Brady until really 2006, 2007, and he won 3 Super Bowls with that team. He's one of the greatest defensive minds in the history of the game, and not to put him in the Hall of Fame is an absolute joke. It's a joke.
It absolutely is, but this is the same. This is the same thing as
Sean's gonna have to wait years now.
This is the same group that has kept Mike Shanahan out for umpteen years.
That's another joke. That's another joke. Do we watch NFL offenses? Guys, back at home, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Flora, all those guys, where do they come from?
The Shanahan coaching tree. There's a picture of all of them in one, LaFleur and McVay and Kyle. So that I saw that, or Ray brought that news up. That's ridiculous. I mean, say what you will about Bill Belichick and his, in his
24-year-old girlfriend, but that shouldn't matter.
His taste in women or how he's related to the average 18-year-old these days in college football. None of that matters. And to your point, when it comes to Brady, it's like, well, we just got through a game where Sean Payton couldn't win with Jared Stidham. So, like, there are limits. And Bill Belichick not having the great, like, it's possible that the Patriots had the greatest quarterback and greatest coach at the same time. Like, that's possible.
I think they
wild,
did.
But it's possible, and they did.
So is Brady not going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer now because of Deflategate?
Yeah. I hope that it's not the Bill Polian stuff. Bill Polian, who is more known now, not for drafting Peyton Manning, but being the guy that said Lamar Jackson should play wide receiver.
Yeah. No,
so that's who people are apparently taking advice from. That's wild. Corey Roldan, my guest. Let's talk about Sunday, shall we? I guess my first question is, did you or anyone you were around have any idea that the weather was going to get like that?
No, because we knew it was coming. Okay. We knew the weather was coming. We thought it would be 10 to 20 minutes. And then once I couldn't see, I was on the field. Once I couldn't see the other side of the field, I was like, oh, this is going to be bad. Real quick, a few thoughts on the game, if you let me just ramble here.
Well, that's what you're here for.
My first thought with the weather, I don't think the Broncos had any clue. All right. First thought, walking into that stadium, seeing Stidham warm up, see the fans absolutely brace him, chanting steady, steady. And then seeing him just kind of like, he looked like he was ready. He was the man of the arena, right, with his kids. That second drive, the bomb to Marvin Mims, to Cortland Sutton, you're thinking, man, they're going to win this game. They're going to win this game. I don't have an issue with the 4th down call because that's who Sean Payton is. I have an issue with the play call. And Sean talked today about how he has regrets with the play call. Give it to Adam Pentis. Either way, the Broncos should have won that football game. They should have won it because if the one thing that Jared Stidham couldn't do was turn the football over. And he makes that one play. If he takes a sack or if he throws it away when he should have threw it away, the Broncos win that football game because there is zero chance the Patriots. The weather should have benefited the Broncos. But since the Broncos didn't capitalize on their first half success, it hurt them. They should have went into halftime up 7-0 or 10-0, and the snow comes down, and I don't think there is a chance that the Patriots are scoring in that snow. Here's another thing. If we would have went into overtime, Ryan, we would have played another 2 hours.
Because nobody would have scored.
No, because the snow was that bad. It was like I had live shots in the 5:30, and I was out in that cold in the snow for an hour and a half after the game, and it was coming down harder and harder. Yeah.
Well, and let me, because I was going to ask you about the 4th and 1 versus the backwards pass, but let me ask you about the weather. Is that, and you come from a place that has climate controlled football, and I am of the mind that climate controlled football is better football, and I can't wait for the Broncos to have a retractable roof. So nothing like Sunday can ever happen again in Denver. Are you of like mind when it comes to weather's impact on football games?
I mean, I think it's football. I do.
Even in that?
I think, yeah, it's football. I hate the dome. I come from the Superdome, and I think the Superdome is different than every dome stadium because it has, Michael Jordan's game winner. It has Muhammad Ali's fight in there. It's a different dome. I don't want to see 32 dome stadiums in the NFL. Weather happens, that happens, and you play football and roll. We're on the gridiron. It's football, baby. Just play. Just play.
So far, the only thing you and I agree on is Bill Belichick.
Okay. All right, give me your thoughts on the other two real quick.
I understand what you're saying about Sean Payton, and I just got done saying that what is more gutting about the call is that that mentality also got you the idea that Sean Payton's not going to be beholden to what popular opinion is or what analytics are, and the fact that he kind of does his own thing is a big reason why they're in that game. But that can still be the most consequential thing that happened and started a domino effect on why the Denver Broncos lost that game. Like, you can recognize that Sean Payton is the biggest reason why the Denver Broncos were even in that game, while also saying he probably cost them that game with that decision.
I disagree, because if Stidham just takes a sack, they win the game. If you do not literally sit there and do this, holding the football and going back.
Well, that first pump, it's like you gotta get rid of it right there. He pumped and then he reloaded, and then
And then you're like, I don't know what that was. If that does not happen, the Patriots are not scoring a touchdown in that game, in that weather. They're not.
Mm-hmm.
That Broncos defense was like mucus in your throat. They were on them. Okay.
So maybe there is a middle ground where 4th and 1, maybe the 4th and 1 didn't ultimately cost them the game more than that turnover. But with what you're saying about the Patriots not being able to score points, 10-0 would have been just as good as 14-0.
But they scored 10. So you're playing in the snow for 2 more hours. So we see what happens.
And then if the Broncos would have lined up right on the field goal, or maybe they did.
If you do 8 yards, but it's hard to see because you're in the snow. You can't
Did you see that? Were you around Will Lutz when he said that?
Yeah, but I guess.
And then he had to go on social media and be like, "Oops, my bad. We were lined up correctly."
And then Jeremy Crashaw maybe counts, in the snow. I don't like it's.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's football. I think that makes the game beautiful, right? There is aura and beauty for imperfections, right? Wabi sabi. Okay. Enjoy the imperfect,
Good pull by you.
Hey, enjoy the imperfections of football. When it rains, it pours, you're in the elements, both teams are in the elements. How do you adjust? Why I love football, I play college football. You know why I love football? Football teaches you about life, right? It's going to hit you hard and you got to get back up, right? There's going to be things that come your way that's out out of control, and there was a lot of things out of the Broncos' control. But if they would have done the things right in the first half, they would have been successful in the second half. It's a game of inches.
Yeah. Speaking of the Broncos' imperfections, how do you perfect those? What do you think that the top priority this offseason should be? Both George Payton and Sean Payton, you heard them talk a lot about this kind of stuff today. Where do you think they should go, and what vibe did you get from the two of them listening to them today?
Well, I'll tell you, Garrett Bowles yesterday said they need to get a playmaker. And I agree with Mr. Bowles, because you need somebody that is a game changer and can change the game at any point. Waddle. Give me Jalen Waddle, because that's going to look. Marvin Mims is a really good top end speed, but he's not a guy that's consistently going to get open and consistently break multiple tackles. I think Jalen Waddle
the volume can't be that great with him. Like there's a little bit of Percy Harvin, right? Where as gifted as Percy Harvin is, you can only use him so much, or in some ways he loses his effectiveness.
Yes, correct. How about Breece Hall? Waddle, Breece Hall, that team might be in the Super Bowl.
My man, that sets me up perfectly for what I want to talk about when I let you go. But I am 1,000% with you on the Breece Hall. Or he's not the only one at that position, but I think that maybe the receiver position is a given. Like they have a real need, they have a real opening there. But if you really want to, move the needle for the Denver Broncos, how about a running back that may be more talented than anyone they have and more available than anyone that they currently have on the roster?
And then I look at Kenneth Walker. I'm like, Travis Etienne would be great in the Peyton offense. Etienne was great in Jacksonville. I don't know how Jacksonville lets him go.
Yeah.
Breece Hall. I'm saying it. Breece Hall.
I like it. So Breece Hall and Belichick. You and I agree. Corey Roldan, what do you got? Cook it. Just we got Peyton audio. Yes, Peyton clips that I'm in audio. You're in video. George and Sean Payton tonight on KKTV.
Yeah, we got the Paytons. We're kind of wrapping up the season as a whole, and then we got Nuggets highlights against the Pistons tonight at 10.
Nice.
So,
and
then I'm getting some rest because, it was pretty cold on Sunday.
Yeah, dude, you're I know, look, we have the best jobs in the world. We have no right to complain. But on a day like that, salute. I get it's the AFC Championship. I don't care, man.
Oh, it was awesome.
You get my undying respect for being out, and you were out there, doing pregame, and you weren't tucked away in the tunnel until, hey, I got to get this one shot. You were out there, man, and I give you all the credit in the world. I could not do that.
It's a blast, though, man. Everybody else is in the press box, right. And I'm on the field, and it's great being on the field until about 8 minutes ago in the fourth quarter, and you can't feel your feet, and about 4 minutes ago, and you can't feel your hands, and you're like, oh man, this game could go into overtime.
Appreciate it, bub. We'll talk soon.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, we'll see you. That's Corey Roldan, KKTV 11. Catch him tonight at 5:30 and 10 with more with George Payton and Sean Payton. And as I mentioned, he kind of teed me up perfectly for what I want to get into next as we start the conversation about where the Broncos go from here, what they should be focused on. I get the receiver talk. I get it. But there's another position that I think that the Denver Broncos should seriously consider upgrading, even though they like the people they have. That's next here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Let's hit the text line at 719-247-1313. A lot of topics on the table, and I will reintroduce those topics at the top of the hour with the three stories that are driving the show. But in the meantime, what's on your mind, Ray Dominguez? Well, I'm curious what's on your mind, but I tee you up to deliver what is on the text line currently.
So from Brett, all week long, we heard everybody at the microphone for the Broncos talk about how they need to score touchdowns instead of field goals in the red zone. I think he got in his own head.
I think that might be true, but would that still not warrant criticism? So if he got in his own head of I got to score a touchdown here, okay, then maybe it's not that pushes it back against the idea that he did this because he wanted to send a message that I can do this with my backup quarterback. Fine. But it still remains that he screwed up in a pretty major way and sent tipped over the first domino that led to the Denver Broncos losing on Sunday, and Corey Roldan and I can respectfully agree to disagree on that. Next.
719, Mark Schlereth, apologies, was in the booth with Peyton Manning and John Elway when the 4th and 1 hit. All three of them looked at each other and said, "You got to kick it." And they all agreed that was a downfall. And if those guys ain't right, I don't know who would ever be right.
Well, I would think that I would be up there on that list. If Ryan's not right, then and Mark Schlereth, you're right, because Mark Schlereth took it a step forward further and was on the Dan Patrick Show on this station and railed against the analytics nerds, because Mark Schlereth has decided to take on this persona of one of the bad guys in Revenge of the Nerds, that, and apparently it's his shtick now, but that doesn't mean he's wrong. Like, I'm not going to disparage the people that deal in the analytics world. I just don't think that analytics are the be all end all. But the great irony of it all, as I pointed out earlier, the analytics were split. The analytics were split on Sean Payton going for it. It wasn't like, analytics definitely say go. And that's what Mark Schlereth thought. And that speaks to how confusing it was that Sean Payton made that call, because I'm saying it's hubris. Mark Schlereth is saying it's analytics nerds. Brett's saying he got in his own head. Like, we haven't come to a consensus on why actually he went for it. Mm-hmm. We can just all agree that it was the wrong call.
Yeah. All right, from 719, Sean Payton needs to hire a true offensive coordinator or reinvent himself. The game has passed him by. 1,201 yards, 11 TDs, 4.8 yards an average. Javonte Williams could have gotten 1 yard, but he wasn't a Peyton guy.
Is that signed Mark Kisla?
No, it's not.
I just read a headline from Mark Kisla's latest work, and it mirrors that same sentiment. It's really interesting. At this stage in his career, is Sean Payton a better CEO than he is a play caller? I think it's worth exploring. I think it's worth asking the question. And if I'm connecting these dots right with the Joe Lombardi thing, part of this is going to have to be Sean Payton empowering Davis Webb to some degree. Did he have to give him the whole playbook in order for him to conceivably agree to become the new OC? Maybe, maybe not. But the question Mark Kisla raised in the Gazette not that long ago, it just got published online. Does he need to just give up play calling duties altogether? I think it might be possible, because I'm saying with, Andy Reid's doing the same thing in Kansas City. I don't love it. I don't. And I understand the history with Eric Bieniemy. I would have liked a more progressive looking, more of a higher looking forward to where the NFL is going, being on the cutting edge rather than going back and saying, let's bring in somebody who is just more successful than Davis Webb. We'll take more thoughts on that coming up next. Hello there. Welcome in hour 3 on this Tuesday. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on 740 KVOR or Extra Sports 1300. And a reminder that you can stream both of these stations by simply downloading their respective apps, which are free. Free to download, free to use, and they are sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. Tonight on Extra Sports 1300, it will be the Frank Serratori show at 6. And then at 7, it will be the Nuggets and the Pistons. There is Nuggets news regarding Nikola Jokic's return that I will get to in this hour. But we start with the 3 stories that are driving the show. All right, we start with the Broncos going back to the drawing board.
I will not use that word, take the next step. We go back to the start of the race. Like every 32 teams has to go back and go meet their parents, eat their oranges, and get ready to start again.
The sentiment that has permeated throughout Broncos country in the last couple of days is we'll be back. History will tell you the Denver Broncos will not be back, at least not next year. Only 5 of the last 20 conference championship losers ended up making a Super Bowl in the next 3 years after that loss. And why I bring up the Super Bowl is because the implication of we'll be back, the hopeful tone to that is not we'll be back so we can lose again. It's we'll be back and the result will be different. Only 3 franchises combined for 5 times have been to a Super Bowl within 3 years of losing a conference championship. Brady's Patriots, Mahomes' Chiefs, and Kyle Shanahan's San Francisco 49ers. That's it. Those are the only franchises in the last decade who, and again, within 3 years, forget just going back the next year and then getting to a Super Bowl. That's the list of teams that have been to a Super Bowl within the 3 years of losing a conference championship. The Baltimore Ravens lost a conference championship 2 years ago, and now they have a new head coach because they couldn't get back there. The Buffalo Bills are perpetually saying, we'll be back. Well, you kind of do keep coming back, but then you keep losing. Joe Burrow hasn't even gone to the playoffs since he went to a Super Bowl, and everyone assured him that the Cincinnati Bengals were here to stay and they would be back. It's not right. And it is far from a foregone conclusion that the Denver Broncos are going to be back, especially when you consider the way they won games this year. Regression for a team that wins a ton of one-score games is real. And I am the authority on this because I just watched my football team go from 11-0 in one-score games to 1-9. It is real. And the Chiefs aren't the only team in recent NFL history that proves the rule. The idea that the Denver Broncos will again set the NFL record for most one-score wins in the season is laughable. They're not going to do that. There's going to be some regression. It doesn't have to go from 11-0 to 1-9. But what if they lose 2 more one-score games, 3 more one-score games? They're out of the playoffs entirely, perhaps. So Sean Payton is right. They are starting over, and they have to build back up to get to, and we refer to it as the next level. right? A step further. But I think the understanding that you and I have is that you don't start from where you just ended. You don't pick up from where you left off. And that's what Sean Payton stressed today in his end of season press conference. The fact of the matter is the Denver Broncos have to be better than they were this year. As good as they were, they will have to be better. Whether it's, because of things they will lose, players they will lose, because of the idea that they can't rely on one-score games. They're going to have to turn these one-score games into two-score games. Like, the Broncos are going to have to be a better version of themselves in order to get back to the AFC Championship, especially if the hope or expectation is that the result this time around will be different. So have we seen the first step in the Denver Broncos trying to be better? Here is story number 2.
What's difficult is when it's taking place while you're still playing. And I think our guys have done a good job handling that, but it's still difficult, because preparing for one of those interviews requires time, like quite a bit of time. And then, preparing for an opponent in the playoffs requires every waking minute. And so, I don't know that I have the solution, but I think it's a challenge that we battled as a league. But certainly supportive of those guys.
Sean Payton today speaking on the difficulty of Davis Webb and Vance Joseph balancing trying to help the Denver Broncos get to a Super Bowl and looking out for their own individual futures. And today, perhaps a step for Davis Webb to have his future plans lined up. The Denver Broncos have fired offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi. And this signals to me, with Davis Webb yesterday getting his second interview with the Raiders, this screams to me that this is Sean Payton letting Joe Lombardi go in order to promote Davis Webb to be the offensive coordinator, so other teams can only poach him if they offer him the head coaching position, which I don't think the Raiders or any other team are serious about doing with Davis Webb. That's what I think this move is about. Now, Troy Rank of the Denver Post pointed out something that has to be acknowledged here in terms of the timeline of all of this. The Rooney Rule exists. The Denver Broncos are not going to be able to just name Davis Webb their next offensive coordinator. And I am a proponent of the Rooney Rule. I think it is important. But sometimes it is something that you need to do, but we all know the direction that the Denver Broncos are going. And it would be a tough place for anybody interviewing to be walking into Sean Payton's office believing that they have a legitimate shot of getting the offensive coordinator job. But these rules are in place for a reason, and they need to be respected. And I hope that the Denver Broncos go about it with an open mind. But they have a candidate in-house that they really, really like. So you better come up with a plan that will, blow them away, or they're going to end up making Davis Webb their offensive coordinator. So the timeline of Davis Webb taking over today, tomorrow, the next day, we got to slow down on that because there is a procedure in place, and it's a good procedure. But this is going to end with Davis Webb being the offensive coordinator of the Denver Broncos. And then the question becomes, and a texter just brought up this in the last segment if you were listening. It's good that you're keeping a guy that everyone thinks is very, very smart in the building. Okay, so you're not getting worse by losing Davis Webb. But are you going to empower him if he becomes the offensive coordinator? If he is as bright as everybody says he is, wouldn't Sean Payton not be bright to not hand over the too many negatives? I apologize. Shouldn't he give Davis Webb play calling duties? Because the idea of firing Joe Lombardi as like some, and I saw another headline on CBS Sports, this is not about the Denver Broncos offense sputtering and Joe Lombardi being responsible for it. I just don't believe that. I mean, this is like, a president having a scandal and firing the vice president and being like, yeah, it was your fault. No, it wasn't. We all know it wasn't, because that is just a figurehead. Joe Lombardi, with all due respect, like, he's the offensive coordinator, but he's not calling plays. So the idea that Joe Lombardi bears responsibility for the Denver Broncos losing on Sunday, like, come on now. If you're not going to give the guy the power, then you can't make him the scapegoat here. So I don't think that's what this is about. This isn't about scapegoating Joe Lombardi. This is about keeping Davis Webb. So again, back to Webb. Shouldn't Sean Payton empower Davis Webb? The Broncos are going this far to make sure Davis Webb doesn't leave. He's their QB coach, by the way. QB coach. They are going to great lengths, it seems, to keep him in the building. Wouldn't it make sense to give him actual authority and power over what the Denver Broncos do? And I think the answer to my own question is yes. If Davis Webb is as sharp and talented as people around the Denver Broncos believe he is, then it would be a waste of his talents to promote him just to spite the Raiders. I don't know if Sean Payton's going to give him play calling duties, but count me in favor of giving Davis Webb play calling duties. And I would be saying this anyway, but I also have 4th and 1 that I can kind of point to and say maybe Sean Payton should take his hands off the steering wheel on Sundays. Here's Sean Payton on if he regrets anything from the 4th and 1. This is from today with an extra day to kind of mull it over.
Probably what irks me more is the call more than the decision. It's still early in the game now, and we knew there was going to be flurries. Well, we have a new feel for flurries here, or what can change at the base end of a mountain. But that, there are those moments where, that you wish you had back.
And look, is this not the perfect time to hand over play calling duties when Sean Payton himself is admitting at least that the play call was wrong on that 4th and 1, a massive play in that game? Sean Payton screwed up the play call. I mean, this absolutely feels like the right moment to hand over play calling duties. But why I play that clip and why I had that clip loaded up today before the show started, before the news of Joe Lombardi's firing ever came up, was because I agree with Sean Payton that the play call was all wrong. It's 4th and 1, run it. And if your answer is I don't trust my runners to get that first down, then you shouldn't be going for 4th and 1. But he didn't roll the pocket with Jared Stidham to give him more protection. He was out on an island. The Patriots rushed him, and that play was doomed from the start. So I agree with him. It was a bad play call. But you know how do you avoid bad play calls? You kick the field goal. Right? You kick the field goal, which was the right decision. Analytics were split. Popular opinion was against Sean Payton in that moment. The way the game played out, hindsight, everything that you bring up, that you could possibly bring up, points to that Sean Payton should have kicked the field goal there. So he's standing his ground and trying to, give you a little bit and say, you know what, the play call was wrong. But deciding to go for it was wrong. And it started a domino effect that lost the Denver Broncos the game. And you know what also went against Sean Payton going for it there? Sean Payton. Because the Broncos went for it on 4th down fewer than all but 2 teams in the National Football League this year. So the idea of you dance with the date that brought you, right? You don't deviate. You have a formula. You've been winning games. Let's keep it going. And at the biggest moment, the biggest game of the year, you deviate? So fine by me that Sean Payton is willing to admit that the play call was wrong. I think that's the bare minimum here. But I still contend that it was the wrong call in the moment, in hindsight, in whatever foresight, hindsight, whatever sight you want to look at. It was wrong. And it was a huge reason that the Denver Broncos are firing offensive coordinators today and having end of season press conferences instead of booking their flight to Santa Clara. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the 3 stories that are driving the show. And coming up next, some news about the return of Nikola Jokic. You're listening to Drive Time Sports on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. If I may deviate from the football for just a moment, as soon more attention will be on what the Denver Nuggets and Colorado Avalanche are going to be doing. This is actually a nice spot on the calendar because the Avs are getting ready to go into the Olympic break. So and Nikola Jokic is out. So it gets another a little bit of runway here for us to fully process and do the postmortem on the Denver Broncos. And then, obviously free agency in the draft, and we won't stop talking about the Denver Broncos, but the attention when it is ready to be put on the Denver Nuggets, Nikola Jokic will be back. And when it's ready to be put on the Colorado Avalanche fully, they will be back from Italy. As far as the former, Shams Charania of ESPN had a report today saying that Nikola Jokic is going to be reevaluated in about a week, which, I mean, what other thing do you have to do, Denver? I mean, I know outside of games, like what's the other thing? What's on the to-do list that you're like, in a few days, about a week, we'll get to it. It sounds very like that. We own that, but it's based on the initial timeline. That said, the end of January is the most likely spot where Nikola Jokic would be back on the court. So there's about a week left in January, but it makes it sound like the Denver Nuggets they got other things to get to, that they'll reevaluate their best player in a 3-time MVP and the best player in the world. They'll get around to it when they get around to it. No, it fits the timeline. Now, so that doesn't say to me one way or another whether he's going to be back, because they can reevaluate him and activate him the very same day. Again, what else are the Denver Nuggets doing that is so important that they can't take care of those two pieces of business to reevaluate Jokic, declare him good to go, and activate him? But something that Shams said that I think many Nuggets fans, if they had their druthers, I mean, obviously the sentiment is as soon as Nikola Jokic can get back healthy, the better. But there's a game coming up on Sunday, and that game is against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And there will be many more matchups with the Oklahoma City Thunder because the NBA backloaded all of them into the back part of the season. But the anticipation is that Nikola Jokic's return would coincide with the Nuggets' first matchup with the Oklahoma City Thunder. And at this point, that's where the Nuggets' focus is. It's not on the Timberwolves anymore, and can they get past them? It's not really on the Rockets and how big of a threat they are. And they are a threat, not diminishing that. But the Nuggets are solely locked in on OKC. And with the way that Jamal Murray and some of these other players have played in Nikola Jokic's absence, Peyton Watson in particular, the feeling is, yes, you give the champs their due, but fully healthy, Oklahoma City's not better than Denver. So a lot of fans would like to see Jokic healthy, first and foremost, but healthy for the OKC game. And then there's another piece of this that ties into it. Nikola Jokic is running out of time to be eligible for the MVP. If he is out till let's say middle of next week, with the number of games the Denver Nuggets have coming up, they have tonight against Detroit, they have a back-to-back Thursday, Friday, and then on Sunday, they play OKC. If he misses all of those games, he will have no more wiggle room. Even if he came back, he would have to play every single game to be eligible for the MVP. Now, is that more important than winning a title and having Nikola Jokic healthy for the playoffs? Absolutely not. And that's what Shams Charania pointed out today. is that the Denver Nuggets are not going to prioritize Nikola Jokic's eligibility for postseason awards above the need to have him healthy to win a championship, which is the right call. The guy's won 3 MVPs. Winning more is good, certainly, but the priorities are elsewhere. The MVP is a nice bonus. It's about winning championships. And winning one this year with everything that the Nuggets have done to put themselves in this position. The improvement of Peyton Watson, Jamal Murray playing at an all NBA level. The depth moves that Ben Tenzer and John Wallace made. This is about winning a championship. But when Shams mentions that, then it leads me to believe that Sunday, Nikola Jokic will not be in the lineup. That it will actually be a little bit after that initial timeline. Is that reason to panic? I don't think so. If he's out till March, then maybe. But if we're talking about a few days when the reports already were that Nikola Jokic, his recovery was not a straight line, was not linear. He had some bad days, which is, again, natural. It happens. So if he came back February 5th and not February 1st, I don't think it would be any reason for a Nuggets fan to panic. And Nuggets fans are unfortunately well trained in this. Remember when the Nuggets brought back Jamal Murray for that Warrior game? And what was lost when Jamal Murray went down with that ACL tear? With the way that the Denver Nuggets are playing right now, you love for him to be in the lineup tonight. I mean, this is a showcase game. Top team in the East, one of the best teams in the West. Love to have Jokic. You'd even more so love to have Jokic against Oklahoma City. But there is a bigger picture here. And if it requires a few more days to just make 1,000% sure that Nikola Jokic is fit and ready to go, by all means, take it. If this thing drags out past the All-Star break and into the month of March, then you should be a little bit panicky. But the minimum was that probably he'd be back for the OKC game. I think there's a little wiggle room that somewhere between the most optimistic timeline and Chicken Little, the sky is falling, Nikola Jokic is seriously injured, and the Denver Nuggets championship chances are out the window. There's a little bit of room in here. Middle of next week, end of next week. And that's what I think we're heading for. But we'll see what about a week is, first and foremost, when that news actually comes out that the Denver Nuggets reevaluated him and what the prognosis is there. But the Denver Nuggets, sans Nikola Jokic, holding firm in the 3 seed, the same place they were in when Nikola Jokic got hurt. But tonight, big test against the East best team in the Detroit Pistons. You can hear that at 7 right here on Extra Sports 1300. Now, speaking of health, there was a little tidbit today from Sean Payton's end of season press conference that garnered some national headlines. But like the Nikola Jokic report by Shams Charania, I don't think is a reason to panic if you're a Broncos fan, and Sean Payton doesn't either. That is coming up next here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Always appreciate any time you make for this show on a daily basis, whether it's on 740 KVOR or Extra Sports 1300. And if you go one step further and text into the show, I'll get to it. This text coming in from the 719. Sorry, I'm just tuning in. Stuff your sorries in a sec. I would love to hear your thoughts on the Broncos firing their OC. Poor guy didn't get a play call all year, and he's getting fired. So my thought on Joe Lombardi getting fired is that this is more about Davis Webb than Joe Lombardi. I don't think that this is Joe Lombardi being scapegoated for the lack of success offensively for the Denver Broncos this season. Although many news outlets are taking it as that. And things are being written about how the Denver Broncos offense sputtered at times this season. But you know as well as I do that if there were someone that needed to be held responsible for such a thing, it would be Sean Payton, not Joe Lombardi, to your point. So this would be the weakest, lamest attempt at scapegoating somebody that I have ever seen. If this is really about Joe Lombardi, quote unquote, not doing his job and being a reason why the Denver Broncos offense failed to impress at times this year. What this is about, to me, is Davis Webb. Now, there have been some reports out there from Denver-based writers that are saying that this move would have been made regardless of the interest that Davis Webb is garnering with specifically the Raiders, but other NFL teams as well. And there is a world that what I have said and what they are saying are both true. Because perhaps this could not be a direct result, and this could not be the Broncos playing some, psychological or whatever type of warfare it is with the Raiders and saying, no, you can't have him. Right? It could not necessarily just be about that. It could be about somebody who legitimately has shown promise and deserves to have a larger role. The problem is the next step up for Davis Webb is a job held by Joe Lombardi. So here you have a conundrum that you want to make Davis Webb higher up in the organization. You want to give him more responsibility. You want him to be a louder voice. But in order to do that, you have to respect the chain of command. An offensive coordinator is higher up in the pecking order than a quarterback coach. Although, when's the last time you and I talked about Joe Lombardi, and we've talked about Davis Webb a few times. So it doesn't necessarily have to be about the Raiders, although I have a hard time believing that it's not. Maybe it's an added bonus. Maybe we could put it that way. That the added bonus is that you make it so Davis Webb, if you make him your offensive coordinator, the only way that a team can poach him is by making him their head coach. And I understand the timeline that Troy Rank and others have thrown out there. There is something called the Rooney Rule, in which the Denver Broncos will have to have a process in order to do this. But again, if it's not a head coaching gig, and if Davis Webb has either been told, which might be a little bit problematic, or at least let's not say that anyone's skirting any rules here. There is a feeling that Davis Webb has that if he doesn't take an OC job somewhere else, that he's going to be the offensive coordinator of the Denver Broncos. Okay? Or he holds out hoping. Like that's where I can't quite get to, is the idea that they're making this that Davis Webb has nothing to do with this. Like, that's something you say. So you're not, putting all your cards on the table. And so that you are going into, and I get it, you want to be as fair as you can be, even if you have someone in mind. You want to be fair to the people that you need to interview and to give them the opportunity to wow you. And stranger things have happened than somebody walking in on an interview and a team changing their mind and saying, this is our guy. So that could happen. And you want to have an open mind for that. But you make these moves with a thought in your head. And to me, you're making this move because you want Davis Webb to have that job. Not anything against Joe Lombardi necessarily. You want Davis Webb in that role. So I don't buy that Joe Lombardi is being fired because of the Denver Broncos' shortcomings on offense. Because there is somebody that ultimately has that power, and his name is Sean Payton. And nobody is suggesting Sean Payton gets fired. I think this is about Davis Webb. Now, the next question you bring up, which is a valid one, what is Davis Webb going to do? He won't call plays either. I think he should. I think he should call plays. If you are doing all of this, if you are firing Joe Lombardi, if you are coming off of a game where you yourself, Sean Payton, have admitted that you made a grave mistake in play calling, then I think it's the perfect time for you to examine whether you are right to call plays. And I brought up the Kansas City Chiefs earlier. Andy Reid said he's going to be calling the plays. I like Andy Reid. I don't know if that's the right call. I think that an organization, good organizations like the Chiefs and the Broncos, can we at least be on equal footing in that regard without bickering? Chiefs and Broncos, both very good organizations. I think good organizations, smart organizations, want to be forward-looking, want to bring in the best talent and empower them. So, while you may be right that Davis Webb is not going to make a huge difference because he won't be calling plays, that is, of the possible outcomes, that is one of them. And I will be critical of Sean Payton if that day does come about. And we'll see when the music stops and all the chairs are taken up in the coaching game of musical chairs. But I will look around and I'll say, Davis Webb, is there not something better out there for you? Right now, I mean, Ravens calling plays for Lamar. That'd be a pretty good gig. I don't know if the Ravens are interested in Davis Webb because they have kind of a lot at stake here, and they went young with Jesse Minter, which I like the hire, but you're also going to go young and inexperienced with your offensive coordinator. If we believe the reports coming out of Baltimore that the issue right beneath John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson not seeing eye to eye is that Todd Monken, there was a problem with the way he ran the offense. And you're going to bring in somebody that was a QB coach. So right now I'm having a hard time finding that greener pasture for Davis Webb, even if he ends up being Joe Lombardi next year and not having a ton of game day power over what the offense does. But this should be an opportunity for Davis Webb to take over. If you believe in, and I'm not saying I know Davis Webb as well as people who are in with the Denver Broncos, but everything I hear is absolutely glowing. Wouldn't you want that guy to stay in your organization, have a louder voice because the title that he has, and also more responsibility. But at the very least, I have to believe this is about keeping Davis Webb in the building. Whether it's because of the outside interest or the inevitable outside interest or just Sean Payton really liking Davis Webb. The firing of Joe Lombardi seems more related to Davis Webb to me than it is about Joe Lombardi. But there are a lot of reports out there that are like, no, don't connect those dots. I kind of feel like that's a necessary thing that the Broncos have to put out there. And I think we end up with Davis Webb play calling duties. That's to be determined. But as the offensive coordinator, sure looks like that's the direction we're heading here. And one more text from the same texter. Peyton is too much of a control freak to give up play calling. It will test. And Mark Kisla just wrote something in the Gazette to this point. Like, is it time for Sean Payton to be less of a control freak? Like, and you could be some version of a control freak as a more of a CEO. And certainly what Sean Payton has done for the culture of the Denver Broncos. I mean, that is his best contribution, to take a losing team, a team that is proud, a team that has had a good history, but was on some really hard times, which a bunch of players that wouldn't know winning football if it came up and bit them. And Sean Payton coached into them the habits and the mentality that helped the Denver Broncos get to where they are now. And he can continue to instill that. And he can continue to have a very loud voice when it comes to who they draft and who they sign in free agency. The piece that we're talking about spinning off to Davis Webb, it's a big piece, but it's not everything that Sean Payton does. And would he not still have some veto power? Right? The biggest moments of the game, which maybe given what happened on the 4th and 1, you don't want him to have that say, but certainly a head coach could come in and be like, no, we're going to do it here. Right? We're going to go for it. Now you pick out the play that we're going to go for it with. So yes, it would be a relinquishing of control that we have never seen Sean Payton do. But we are here in 2026. This guy is in his 60s. Like, the game is changing rapidly. I'm not saying that the football has left him. But having a mind that is more on the cutting edge and empowering that person, I think would help the Denver Broncos and help Sean Payton. But it is the ultimate test, as Mark Kisla pointed out, and as you were pointing out, the ultimate test of Sean Payton's ego is to be able to give up that, because it would lead people to believe, oh, Sean Payton doesn't have it anymore. Well, no, there's a lot going on. There's still some room in here to say that this is not Sean Payton admitting failure or weakness. This is about lifting up a bright mind in Davis Webb and making the Denver Broncos an even better operation than they already are. So again, we'll have to see what the timeline looks like here. Obviously, the Rooney Rule is in effect. They have to do, a series of interviews with potential head coaching offensive coordinator candidates. Meanwhile, Arizona, Vegas, Cleveland, they are still actively looking for a head coach and every other coach on their roster. So we'll see if the Denver Broncos ultimately end up in the place where they want Davis Webb to be their offensive coordinator, and if they can fend off these other teams long enough to do what is necessary to satisfy all the requirements to then make Davis Webb the offensive coordinator. So we'll see, but it's the first big move of the offseason for the Denver Broncos, no doubt about it, and has brought in more questions about where this team goes from here after the disappointment of Sunday. For now, we'll leave it there. I appreciate your patronage and your interaction. More great conversation today, and I look to keep the momentum going tomorrow at 3. Don't forget, coming up at 7 o'clock tonight on Extra Sports 1300, it will be the Denver Nuggets hosting the Detroit Pistons. No Nikola Jokic yet, and it's a little all over the place on who will play. Kind of makes it a nice little surprise if you're not on social media to find out just who is playing for the Denver Nuggets, but somehow they continue to remain in the Western Conference 3rd seed. That's coming up at 7. Coming up in the immediate future will be the Frank Serratori Show. Big series coming up for the Falcons this weekend. You want to get the head coach of the Falcons' thoughts coming up momentarily. And I wish you a great rest of your evening. We'll reconvene tomorrow at 3 here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300.